Today's story is titled The Stranger Who Sat Beside Her During a Blackout Never Left Her Mind. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The storm had knocked out power across Manhattan, leaving the city glowing only with the silver of rain and the flash of lightning. Inside the quiet boardroom of Ward Technologies, candles flickered over scattered papers, and a man in a dark suit sat at the head of the table. Ethan Ward, 32, CEO and the youngest tech millionaire in the city, tapped his pen against a thin stack of documents, a marriage contract. Across from him, Maya Lopez sat nervously, her rain-damp hair clinging to her face. She was a freelance photographer, broke, and one notice away from eviction. She never imagined she would be sitting across from the same man who once sat beside her during that blackout in a downtown theater. They had met by accident, in the dark, their hands brushing when the lights went out. They had talked about dreams and fear and hope, never seeing each other's faces. She thought she would never hear from him again until tonight. "Mr. Ward," she began, her voice trembling, "this cannot be real." Ethan's gaze was calm, steady, but beneath the confidence, something desperate flickered. "It is real," he said. "And temporary. I need a wife before the board meeting on Monday." Maya blinked, her heart hammering. "Why me?" "Because you are the only person I have met in years who saw me without knowing who I am," he said quietly. "You spoke to me like I was just a man, not a millionaire. I trust that." The wind howled outside. The candles shivered. He slid the papers toward her. "It is a 6-month agreement. You will be compensated fairly, and your debts will be cleared." Maya's eyes dropped to the words printed on the page, contractual marriage agreement. The ink seemed to blur with her rising pulse. "You do not even know me," she whispered. "I know enough," Ethan said, his tone soft but firm. "You have kindness. You have honesty. I need both right now." She looked up at him, the glow of candlelight softening the sharp edges of his jaw. For a fleeting moment, she saw not power, but loneliness. And maybe, just maybe, she saw a reflection of her own. "Why can you not find someone else?" she asked. "Because everyone else wants what I have," he said. "You are the only one who never asked." Silence stretched between them. The rain outside softened into a steady rhythm, like the ticking of a clock. Maya exhaled slowly, her fingers brushing the pen. "And when it is over, we walk away," Ethan said. "No one gets hurt." But as she signed her name on the dotted line, a quiet voice inside her whispered that someone always does. He stood and offered his hand. "Welcome to the performance of our lives, Mrs. Ward." For a second, her breath caught because even though it was supposed to be fake, the way he said it did not sound like acting at all. The morning after signing the contract, Maya woke up in disbelief. The ink on her signature had barely dried, yet her life had already shifted into something she could not recognize. A sleek black car waited outside her small apartment, and the driver greeted her by name. "Mrs. Ward," he said with a polite nod, and those two words made her pulse stutter. She wanted to correct him, to say it was only a contract, but the truth lodged in her throat. She followed him into the car, the city blurring past in shades of gray. When they reached the Ward estate, the scale of it left her breathless. The mansion stood like a modern fortress, steel, glass, and quiet perfection. Inside, marble floors reflected the morning light, and everything smelled faintly of sandalwood and coffee. Ethan was waiting near the staircase, already dressed in a dark tailored suit, expression unreadable. "Good morning," he said evenly. "From now on, this is your home." Maya nodded, clutching the strap of her camera bag like armor. "I will only stay until the agreement ends," she reminded him. "That is the plan," Ethan replied, but his gaze lingered a moment longer than necessary. Later that day, a woman named Claire, Ethan's executive assistant, appeared with a folder of instructions. "Your first public appearance will be tonight," she said briskly. "A dinner with the board members. They must believe you are truly married." Maya stared at the list of etiquette notes and nearly laughed. "Fork placement, posture, acceptable topics. This feels like acting," she muttered. Claire smiled faintly. "It is. But the stakes are very real." Hours later, stylists transformed her. The reflection in the mirror did not look like a struggling photographer anymore. Her hair was swept into soft waves, her dress an elegant midnight blue. When she stepped into the grand hall, Ethan paused mid-call. His eyes flicked from her face to the pendant resting at her collarbone, a small silver camera charm she had refused to remove. "You look," he stopped, searching for a word. "Different," he finished, his voice quieter. "Still me," she said, straightening her shoulders. The car ride to the dinner was silent, filled with the hum of the engine and unspoken questions. Outside the restaurant, flashes from cameras burst like fireworks. Ethan reached for her hand instinctively. "Just smile and stay close," he whispered. As they entered, the murmur of high society greeted them. Maya kept her head high, trying to ignore the eyes that followed her every step. During dinner, she accidentally used the wrong fork, earning a disapproving glance from one of the board members. Before she could shrink away, Ethan spoke smoothly. "Maya prefers simplicity. It is one of the reasons I fell for her." The table erupted in polite laughter, and Maya shot him a stunned look. Under the table, his hand brushed hers, briefly, a silent reassurance. Later that night, back at the mansion, Maya stood on the balcony overlooking the city. The lights shimmered like constellations, so different from her tiny apartment window view. Ethan joined her, loosening his tie. "You did well tonight," he said softly. "I almost believed it myself." She turned to him, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "You mean the act?" "Maybe not just that," he said, meeting her gaze. For a heartbeat, the silence between them felt charged, something fragile and dangerous. Then Ethan cleared his throat and stepped back. "Good night, Mrs. Ward." When he left, Maya touched the cool metal of her necklace and whispered to herself, "Do not fall for him. It is only a contract." But as the city lights flickered below, a part of her already knew something real had begun the moment she signed her name. Days turned into weeks, and the boundaries written in ink began to blur. Maya's mornings started with coffee in the glass kitchen that overlooked the garden, while Ethan read financial reports beside her. They rarely spoke at first, but silence slowly became comfort instead of tension. The mansion no longer felt like a stranger's world, it became something quietly familiar. Each morning, Ethan's housekeeper left fresh flowers on the table, and Maya began capturing them with her camera. When Ethan saw her prints one afternoon, he paused. "You took these?" She nodded, expecting indifference, but he surprised her with a quiet smile. "You see beauty where most people only see background." That was the first time she saw him soften. Still, their agreement hung between them like glass, clear, fragile, ready to shatter. One evening, Claire informed them of a charity gala hosted by the Ward Foundation. It was their first major appearance as a couple. Maya's nerves spiked, but Ethan assured her, "It is just another performance." That night, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and music. Cameras flashed as they entered hand in hand. Maya whispered, "Everyone is staring." Ethan leaned close. "Then let us give them something to look at." They moved through the crowd like choreography, exchanging polite greetings. During a toast, the host praised the Wards for their support. Ethan raised his glass, but before he could speak, the light suddenly flickered and went out, another blackout. Gasps rippled through the crowd, but Maya laughed softly. "Seems the universe enjoys irony." Ethan chuckled in the dark, his voice closer than she expected. "Brings back memories, does it not?" "The night we met," she whispered. "The night everything changed." For a brief moment, they were alone again, just two voices in the dark. When the lights returned, Ethan's hand was still on hers, and the room burst into applause as if mistaking their moment for rehearsed affection. But to Maya, it felt startlingly real. After the gala, the car ride home was quiet. Ethan broke the silence first. "You handled yourself well tonight." "For a pretend wife?" she teased. He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "For someone who makes me forget it is pretend." The words hung between them. Maya turned toward the window, heart pounding. The city lights reflected in the glass, and for the first time, she saw their silhouettes not as strangers, but as something closer. The next morning, Maya found a note beside her breakfast meeting postponed. "Join me for a walk in the garden." Outside, sunlight poured over marble fountains and trimmed hedges. Ethan was waiting, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a softer version of himself. "I rarely come out here," he said, hands in pockets. "Too many meetings. Too little peace." She smiled, camera in hand. "Then today you are my subject." He laughed quietly, letting her take photos. She caught him mid-laugh, unguarded, human. When she lowered the camera, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Later that night, while editing the photos, she paused on one image, Ethan looking straight at her, not the lens. She zoomed in, heart tightening. The man in that photo did not look like someone pretending. She whispered to herself, "You are breaking rule number 3. Upstairs, Ethan stood by the window, looking at the same garden where she had photographed him. The contract had rules, but none of them warned how real loneliness could feel. And though neither of them said it aloud, both knew that what started as performance was slowly becoming something that could ruin them or save them. Autumn came quietly, painting the garden of the Ward estate with gold and rust. Maya's world had changed again, but this time it was not the mansion or the title that consumed her thoughts, it was Ethan. Their days had become effortless in ways neither expected. He started joining her for breakfast instead of hiding behind morning meetings. She brought light into rooms that had known only silence. Yet both were too careful to name what they felt. One crisp evening, Ethan invited her to join him at a business retreat in upstate New York. "It is only for the weekend," he said, almost casually. "Appearances matter." Maya agreed, unaware that this trip would blur the last line between duty and desire. The retreat sat on the edge of a lake surrounded by pine trees. The air smelled of rain and cedar. When they arrived, photographers swarmed, calling out, "Mr. and Mrs. Ward, over here." Ethan slipped his arm around her waist. "Smile," he murmured. She did, though her pulse raced. Inside the glass lodge, the atmosphere was formal but intimate. Executives, investors, and their partners mingled under amber lights. During dinner, Maya accidentally spilled a bit of red wine on her napkin, and one of the guests, a sleek woman with perfect posture, smirked. "Not used to these dinners, are you, dear?" Before Maya could answer, Ethan replied evenly, "My wife has nothing to prove to anyone here." The table fell silent, the woman looked away, and Maya felt an unexpected warmth bloom inside her chest. After dinner, they stepped outside. The lake mirrored the moon, still and perfect. Maya wrapped her shawl tighter against the cold. "You did not have to defend me," she said softly. "Yes, I did," he replied. "People forget that kindness has nothing to do with status." She looked up at him, moonlight tracing his features. "You are not what people think," she said. "Neither are you," he whispered back. The silence that followed was heavier than words. Then, without planning, without reason, Ethan reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. She froze, but did not pull away. His hand lingered for a heartbeat longer than it should have. "We should go back," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Later that night, the rain began to fall, soft at first, then harder. Maya stood by the window of their shared suite, watching the droplets streak down the glass. Behind her, Ethan spoke quietly. "Do you ever regret signing that contract?" She turned to him, her eyes searching his face. "Sometimes," she said honestly. "But not tonight." The power flickered once, twice, and then went out another blackout, as if the universe insisted on reminding them of where it all began. In the dark, Maya heard Ethan move closer. "Seems we have a pattern," he said, his voice low. "Every time the lights go out, I find you." Her breath caught, and before she could reply, he leaned in. The kiss was not rehearsed, not part of the agreement. It was real, messy, human, and terrifying. When the lights returned, they both stepped back, breathing hard, eyes wide. Ethan broke the silence first. "That should not have happened." Maya's voice trembled. "Maybe it already did, the night we met." Neither spoke again. Outside, thunder rolled across the lake, and somewhere between lightning and silence, both realized the same thing: their fake marriage had just crossed the line into something dangerously real. The week after the retreat was a blur of silence and stolen glances. Maya and Ethan returned to the mansion as if nothing had happened, but everything had changed. The air between them carried something raw and unspoken. Maya tried to lose herself in photography, yet every image she developed seemed to reflect him. One evening, while she was editing photos in her studio, Claire appeared at the door holding a sleek tablet. "The board is planning a surprise anniversary dinner," she said carefully. "They want to celebrate your 6-month marriage." Maya froze. "Our 6 months are almost over?" Claire nodded. "Next week. After that, the contract dissolves unless renewed." When Ethan returned home that night, Maya confronted him. "Is it true? The contract ends next week?" Ethan hesitated. "Yes. That was the deal." Her throat tightened. "And after that, we pretend it never happened?" He met her eyes, then looked away. "It is better that way." The next days passed in tension. Ethan buried himself in work, while Maya avoided him. Yet fate had its own plans. At the anniversary dinner, the Ward ballroom glittered with press cameras and investors. Maya wore a silver gown, her smile practiced, but her heart breaking. Ethan approached her just before the event began. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "Thank you," she replied, her tone cool. "Let us give them the performance they paid for." As the night unfolded, Ethan raised a toast. "To partnership," he said, glancing at her. The crowd applauded, flashes exploding around them. Then a journalist suddenly called out, "Mr. Ward, is it true your marriage is just a contract?" The room went silent. Maya's pulse spiked. Ethan opened his mouth, but before he could speak, another voice cut through the smooth voice of Victor Lang, one of Ethan's rival shareholders. "Seems the fairy tale is just good business," Victor said loudly, smiling for the cameras. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Maya stood frozen, humiliation burning her skin. Ethan stepped forward, jaw tight. "That is enough, Victor." "Oh, come on," Victor sneered. "Everyone knows she was hired to play the wife." The reporters gasped. Ethan's security moved in, but the damage was done. Maya turned and walked out before anyone could stop her. Outside, rain began to fall, soaking through her dress. A car pulled up beside her. It was Ethan's. "Maya, wait," he called, running after her. "Do not. Just do not," she said, tears mixing with the rain. "Was it all a lie?" "No," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "At first, maybe it was. But not anymore." "Then why did you stay silent in there?" she demanded. "Because if I admitted the truth, the board would strip me of everything I have built," he said helplessly. "I would lose my company." She shook her head. "You already lost something far more important." Maya turned and walked away into the downpour, leaving Ethan standing alone beneath the streetlight. Back inside the ballroom, cameras still flashed, but the fairy tale had crumbled. That night, Ethan sat in his office staring at the empty chair across from his desk. Her camera bag was gone. Her laughter no longer echoed in the halls. For the first time in years, the silence he once loved felt unbearable. He opened the drawer, pulled out the original contract, and looked at her signature faded slightly from age and touch. "You were never just a deal," he whispered. But words could not undo what pride had broken. Outside, the storm raged on, as if the sky itself mourned the love neither of them had the courage to claim. Days slipped into weeks after the disastrous anniversary dinner. The tabloids feasted on headlines about the fake marriage of the year, and Maya vanished from public sight. She left the Ward mansion without a word, returning to a small studio apartment above a cafe in Brooklyn. It was nothing like the glass palace she had left behind, but it was hers. She spent her mornings developing photos and her nights staring at the city skyline, wondering if Ethan ever looked up at the same stars. Ethan, meanwhile, was drowning in the consequences. The board of Ward Technologies was furious about the scandal. Victor Lang was calling for an emergency meeting to remove him as CEO. Ethan showed up every day, expression unreadable, but the light that once burned behind his eyes was gone. Claire, ever loyal, tried to help. "You could fight the rumors, Ethan. Tell them the truth." He shook his head. "And destroy her privacy? I have done enough damage." That night, alone in his office, Ethan opened his laptop. On the screen was an unfinished presentation for a foundation project Maya had once suggested, a photography program for underprivileged kids. He stared at it for a long time, then made a decision. The next morning, a press release went out: Ward Technologies funds new art center in Brooklyn. Reporters assumed it was corporate charity, but Ethan knew better. It was the only apology he could give. Days later, Maya arrived at the address on the flyer she had found slipped under her door. The sign above the door read, "The Light We Share, sponsored by Ward Technologies." Inside, sunlight streamed through wide windows, illuminating a wall of framed photos. Her photos. Every image she had ever taken while living at the mansion had been printed, curated, and displayed with her name beneath them. Children and parents walked through the exhibit, smiling, pointing. Maya's throat tightened. "He did this," she whispered. Behind her, a familiar voice answered softly, "You once said every person deserves to be seen. I wanted them to see you." She turned, and there he was. Ethan stood in the doorway, looking tired but human, his suit gone, sleeves rolled to his elbows. "Ethan," she breathed, unsure whether to cry or run. "You should not be here." "The press, let them talk," he said. "I came to tell you I am sorry. Not as a CEO, not as the man who offered you a deal, but as the man who broke it." Her eyes filled with tears. "Why now?" "Because when you left, I realized something," he said, voice low. "The company can survive without me, but I cannot survive without you." She shook her head, torn between anger and love. "You cannot just appear and fix everything with grand gestures." "Then tell me how," he said. "Tell me what to do, and I will do it." The silence stretched. Finally, she spoke. "You could start by being honest. About what you feel." He took a slow step forward. "I love you, Maya. No contracts. No pretending." Her heart pounded, but before she could respond, cameras flashed outside. The press had found them. Maya stiffened, panic flooding her chest. Ethan turned toward the crowd gathering outside the glass windows and did something no one expected. He took her hand, pulled her close, and said clearly, loud enough for every microphone to catch, "This is my wife. She always was." The reporters erupted, shouting questions, but Ethan only looked at her, eyes steady. "Whatever happens next," he whispered, "it will be real." For the first time since the night of the blackout, Maya smiled, not for the cameras, not for anyone, but because she finally believed him. The next morning, headlines exploded across every screen. "Ethan Ward declares love for his contract wife," one read. "From fake to real," said another. The world could not decide whether to mock or romanticize the confession, but Ethan did not care. For the first time in years, he felt free from the cage of image and expectation. At Ward Technologies, the board was in chaos. Victor Lang stormed into the conference room. You destroyed the company's reputation, he spat. Ethan remained calm. No, Victor. I reminded people that there is a heart behind the brand. The vote of confidence was brutal but close. By a single margin, Ethan remained CEO. When the meeting ended, he stepped outside, breathing in the cold city air. Across town, Maya sat in the small Brooklyn cafe beneath her studio, trying to process everything. The waitress placed a newspaper beside her cup. Her own photo filled the front page, her hand in Ethan's, the caption reading, "The photographer who stole the millionaire's heart." She exhaled shakily, unsure if she should laugh or cry. Then the cafe door opened. Ethan walked in, dressed simply, no suit, no entourage. Just a man. "You are trending worldwide," she said, half amused, half overwhelmed. "So are you," he replied, sliding into the seat across from her. "I never liked the spotlight," she admitted. "Then let us step out of it," he said. "We can start again," quietly. "Start again," she echoed. "After everything?" "Because of everything," he said softly. The barista brought over 2 coffees, recognizing them but wisely saying nothing. For a few moments, they sat in comfortable silence, the hum of the cafe wrapping around them like safety. Ethan reached into his coat and placed something on the tabli, a familiar object wrapped in velvet. Maya froze. "Is that the ring?" he said. "The one from the contract. I kept it. But this time, it is not for show." She stared at it, emotions flooding through her. "You do not need to do this here," she whispered. "I want to," Ethan said, his voice steady. "Here, in the place where you found yourself again. No press, no performance, just us." He took a deep breath. "Maya, I cannot promise perfection, but I can promise honesty. I love you. I want to spend the rest of my life proving that this time, it is real." Her eyes filled with tears. The cafe went quiet as if the city itself was holding its breath. Maya reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "Then stop talking," she said gently, "and show me." Ethan smiled for the first time in weeks, a real smile that reached his eyes. Outside, the rain that had haunted their story finally stopped, and sunlight filtered through the windows, washing over them both. For once, there were no contracts, no cameras, no pretending, only 2 people who had finally found the courage to choose each other for real. The months that followed felt like a different lifetime. Maya and Ethan kept their promise to live quietly, away from the headlines and the noise. They moved into a modest brownstone in Brooklyn, trading boardrooms and ballrooms for morning walks and late-night coffee on the rooftop. Ethan still ran Ward Technologies, but he built distance between his name and the glare of fame. Maya continued her photography, and her exhibit, "The Light We Share," grew into a community project for young artists. Their lives were no longer performances. They were real, grounded, filled with small rituals that mattered more than luxury ever had. One Sunday afternoon, Ethan was helping hang new photos in the studio when Claire arrived unexpectedly. She smiled warmly. "It suits you, you know. The normal life." Ethan laughed. "Normal is underrated." Claire handed him an envelope. "You should see this." Inside was a letter from the Ward Foundation Board. They had voted to fund a permanent art center in Maya's name. Ethan looked up, his eyes softening. "She did that herself. I just followed her lead." Later that evening, Maya came home, her hair windblown, camera slung across her shoulder. Ethan handed her the letter. "Looks like your work is inspiring more than you think." She read it, stunned, then laughed through tears. "An art center? Under my name?" "You earned it," he said simply. She looked at him with a tenderness that made his chest tighten. "You know," she whispered, "when we met, I thought you were the loneliest person I had ever seen." Ethan smiled faintly. "And now?" "Now you look found," she said. He reached for her hand, pulling her closer. "You are the reason I am." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by walls lined with her photographed snapshots of laughter, sunlight, and second chances. Outside, the city glowed softly under the evening sky. A year had passed since the night of the blackout, yet the memory still lived between them like a heartbeat. That night, as they walked home from the studio, Maya stopped in front of a small antique shop. Inside the window sat an old film camera, cracked but beautiful. She smiled. "This looks familiar." Ethan grinned. "Every story needs its relics." He bought it on the spot, and they took it home, placing it beside the ring box on their shelf, a quiet reminder of how far they had come. As the city lights flickered through the curtains, Maya whispered, "Do you ever miss that version of us? The fake one?" Ethan thought for a moment. "Sometimes. Because it led me to the real thing." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Then maybe the blackout was never a mistake." He kissed her forehead gently. "Maybe it was destiny." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the city beyond, and for once, everything felt exactly as it should, real, simple, and finally theirs. 1 year later, the air in Brooklyn carried the scent of spring rain and fresh beginnings. Maya stood in the middle of the new art center that now bore her name, the Maya Ward Foundation for Visual Arts. The walls were lined with photographs from students all over the city, each one capturing small moments of kindness, hope, and light. She smiled as she adjusted one of the frames, remembering how it all began with a single blackout and a stranger who sat beside her. Behind her, footsteps echoed softly. Ethan entered, wearing a simple white shirt, his sleeves rolled up, the same warmth in his eyes that had melted every wall she once built. "They are beautiful," he said, looking at the photographs. "You gave them this?" she replied. "No," he said gently. "You did. I just gave the world away to see it." They shared a quiet laugh before one of the children from her program ran up, holding a camera. "Mrs. Ward, can you take a picture of us?" Maya knelt down, smiling as the kids gathered around. She snapped the photo, the flash filling the room with soft light. When she looked up, Ethan was watching her the way he had the first night they met, like the world had just come back on after darkness. Later that evening, the gallery lights dimmed for the closing ceremony. Maya stood on stage to thank everyone, her voice steady but emotional. "This project began because of one truth," she said. "Even when the world goes dark, there is always someone willing to share their light. Mine happened to be sitting beside me during a blackout." The crowd laughed softly, some wiping away tears. Ethan joined her on stage, taking her hand. "When I first met Maya," he said, "I thought I was saving my company. What I did not realize was that she would end up saving me." The audience applauded as Maya leaned into him, whispering, "You always know how to steal the spotlight." He smiled. "Only when you are in it." After the event, they walked outside under a sky strung with city lights. The air was cool, the street quiet except for the distant hum of traffic. Ethan stopped, pulling a small box from his pocket. "You already have one ring that came from a contract," he said softly, opening it to reveal a new one. "This one comes with a promise." Tears shimmered in Maya's eyes as he dropped to one knee. "Marry me again," he said, "for real this time." Her answer came in a whisper that carried more truth than any vow before. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and the city around them seemed to glow brighter. As they kissed beneath the streetlight, a faint flicker swept through the power lines above them. Just for a heartbeat, the lights went out. Maya laughed against his chest. "Another blackout?" "Or maybe," Ethan said, holding her close, "the universe just wanted a front row seat." When the lights returned, they were still standing there, smiling, the world around them illuminated in gold. Their story had begun in darkness, but it ended in light, proof that sometimes, the best mistake you ever make is the one that leads you home.
Cảm xúc căng thẳng, đôi mắt nói điều chưa dám thừa nhận. On 11 Scandal Moment Newspaper Headline Reflection. Maya đứng trước cửa tiệm, ánh sáng neon phản chiếu dòng báo fake ma scandal. Cô nhìn xuống nhẫn bạc trên tay, ánh mắt pha giữa đau và tự trọng. Ảnh 12 Symbolic Cloud or City View. Maya đứng một mình ở ban công tòa nhà, cầm tách cà phê, nhìn bình minh phủ lên Manhattan. Phía xa, bóng Ethan bước tới mở, không gió mặt, không có nụ cười, chỉ cảm giác hy vọng và định mệnh chưa khép. Tổng thể phong cách hình ảnh tôn màu xanh thép vàng nhạt nâu cà phê phối velvet xì warm. Ánh sáng chuyển dần từ lạnh cốc Hotwood sang ấm emotional Cornetino. Trang phục Maya giản dị, về sau thanh lịch hơn Ethan luôn tối giản. Tinh tế, biểu cảm không pose, chỉ hành động tự nhiên ánh mắt kể câu chuyện. Bạn muốn mình viết phong mô tả chi tiết cho từng ảnh chuẩn để đưa vào AI imitator thao linh này không? Nếu đồng ý, mình sẽ xuất 12 phong mô tả cinematic chuyên nghiệp cho bạn đúng style Mỹ, ánh sáng khung hình độ cảm xúc. User đầu tiên viết cho tôi một phong để tạo ảnh nhân vật nam chính mang trang phục phù hợp theo kịch bản. Không cần nói tên nhân vật trong phong, không nói từ minor. Nhân vật này được đánh số thứ tự là 1 để làm số mặc định cho sự xuất hiện trong cảnh phong sau này. Tôi muốn khuôn mặt chuẩn người Mỹ và ánh sáng đều trên cả khuôn mặt. Phong tạo hình mỗi nhân vật phải có đầy đủ chi tiết và mô tả từ 80 đến 100 từ tiếng Việt. Phong cách cinema, không có ai khác trong khung hình ngoài nam chính. Mỗi phong viết thành một đoạn không xuống dòng và để nội dung phong trong cặp dấu ngoặc vuông. Ví dụ 1. Nội dung phong, không trả giá cốt, giờ son, Vnet, lưu ý phong viết bằng tiếng Việt. Assistant 1. Một người đàn ông Mỹ khoảng 33 tuổi, vóc dáng cao, vai rộng, khí chất điềm tĩnh và thành đạt. Anh mặc vest xanh than vừa vặn, áo sơ mi trắng cổ mở nhẹ, không thắt cà vạt, gợi vẻ tự tin nhưng không khoa trương. Mái tóc nâu sẫm được chải gọn ra sau, ánh mắt sâu và có chiều suy tư. Gương mặt góc cạnh, làn da sáng, ánh sáng chiếu đầu trên khuôn mặt tạo cảm giác trung thực và chuyên nghiệp. Phong nền là văn phòng hiện đại với ánh sáng ban ngày nhẹ nhàng kiểu phim điện ảnh. Không có ai khác trong khung hình. Hơi nước từ ly cà phê bay lên tạo hiệu ứng mờ nhẹ. Nền sau là cửa kính phản chiếu ánh sáng thành phố. Góc quay trung cảnh, ánh sáng chiếu đầu trên cả hai khuôn mặt. Phong cách cinematic chân thực như poster phim tình cảm hiện đại. 1,2 user ok. Viết tiếp 8 prompt để tạo ảnh 1 đến 8 theo outline 9 phần không để lộ cái kết. Yêu cầu viết mỗi prompt theo đúng format prompt là để số thứ tự prompt và nội dung trong cùng một cặp dấu ngoặc vuông, sau đó nối vô dấu và viết số của character xuất hiện trong cảnh. Ví dụ trong prompt 1 có sự xuất hiện của nhân vật nam mà ở trên mình viết prompt nhân vật nam là số 1 thì trong prompt để số 1 phía sau và trong cặp dấu ngoặc vuông có 2 nhân vật 23 24. Viết prompt mỗi cảnh tối đa 3 nhân vật và tối thiểu 1 nhân vật thì đều để trong cặp dấu ngoặc vuông cho mình. Ví dụ 1, 3, 4. Ví dụ prompt đúng chuẩn theo yêu cầu của mình như sau 1. Nội dung prompt 1, 3, 4. Viết bình thường không dở son, không cốt, không suy nghĩ lâu, không popular, không hỏi thêm. Lưu ý prompt viết bằng tiếng Việt. Mỗi prompt viết ít nhất 60 đến 80 từ Assistant 4. Cảnh buổi sáng mùa đông ở New York. Một quán cà phê nhỏ nơi cô gái trẻ mặc đồng phục phục vụ đang vội vã bước ra khỏi cửa với khay cà phê trên tay. Trời lất phất mưa, ánh sáng phản chiếu từ vỉa hè ướt tạo cảm giác lạnh và chân thực. Màu phim xanh xám nhẹ, hơi thở khói trắng trong không khí. Cô nhìn đồng hồ, khuôn mặt căng thẳng nhưng vẫn kiên cường. Góc quay ngang cỡ trung, phong cách điện ảnh hiện đại. 2 năm, không gian phòng họp lớn với tường kính và ánh sáng ban ngày chiếu xuyên qua. Cô phục vụ mở cửa bước vào, tay cầm khay cà phê. Ánh mắt ngạc nhiên khi thấy những người đàn ông mặc vest đang nhìn cô. Ở đầu bàn, người đàn ông mặc vest xanh than ngẩng lên, ánh mắt bình tĩnh xen chút tò mò. Hơi nước từ cà phê bốc lên tạo lớp sương mờ nhẹ. Không khí căng thẳng, phong cách phim drama doanh nghiệp. 1,26. Bên trong căn hộ nhỏ, cô gái ngồi một mình trên bàn gỗ cũ, xung quanh là hóa đơn và ánh đèn vàng yếu. Cô cầm tấm ảnh gia đình trong tay. Gương mặt pha chút mệt mỏi và quyết tâm. Bên ngoài cửa sổ là những ánh đèn xa mờ của thành phố New York về đêm. Tôn màu ấm nhẹ xen chút xám, khung hình cô độc nhưng tràn ý chí. 27. Phòng làm việc hiện đại của người đàn ông. Ánh sáng ban ngày phản chiếu qua cửa kính lớn.